Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Bradshaw Mountain boys basketball coach Blair Hillig. He returns to the show to speak about how he makes late season adjustments, what the focus in practice has been, and how he teaches defensive intensity. We'll then be joined by Mingus Union girls basketball coach Paul Ventura. He'll break down how the team almost doubled their win total from last season, how the freshman class impacted the season, and gives an update to the state of the program. And when we return from break, we'll be joined by Lee Williams boys soccer coach Trey Fitzsimmons. He'll speak about how his first season with the program went, how he plans to develop his junior goalie, and previews their upcoming playoff game. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Lee Williams High School boys soccer coach Trey Fitzsimmons. Coach Fitzsimmons, welcome onto the program.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
We're very happy to have you, sir. The Volunteers enter the play-in round. They've got a matchup against Cholla High School coming up here very soon. They finished the regular season 8-4-1, overall. And the Volunteers were able to secure a number 16 seed in the 4A. So, Coach, how did you feel in your first season this season went?
I definitely feel like we did pretty well, especially being a first-year coach and a lot of kids, coming out of the program. They had their previous coach. They were a little timid at first, the new coach stepping in, especially my seniors coming into their last year. But I think we did a pretty good job overall.
Did you learn? What would you say you've learned, and how did you grow as a coach in your first year with this program?
I definitely went in with some different expectations because I didn't really expect how the kids were going to be.
Okay.
But I definitely learned a lot from the kids, and they learned a little bit from me. So I definitely feel like I grew quite a bit from that.
What sparked that interest in coaching?
Well, I played soccer for the same school when I was in high school. I graduated in 2016, and I knew they were looking for a coach. And I coached a little bit during like the city league portion of here in Kingman, Arizona. Yeah. And they're looking for a coach. So I threw my hat in the ring. So,
is that always kind of something you wanted to look into? I mean, you talk about being a former Lee Williams volunteer yourself. I mean, is that just, was it kind of the most logical next step for you to kind of take advantage of an open situation at your old school?
Right. Yeah. So, I've always seen myself as coaching in some kind of sport, either football or soccer, something like that. I've always kind of wanted to help the kids out, be part of something bigger than myself. Yeah. And a big reason why I wanted to coach at this school, because my coach back when I was in high school, he was a big inspiration to me. So I kind of lead by example off of him.
Obviously you're in your first season. You guys have made it to the playoffs in your first year. Like I said, 8-4-1 overall. I mean, how did you get those kids to buy in? Like you said, you're coming in a relatively younger coach. Some of these guys are in a few years older than you are or younger than you are. So you come in with a lot of energy. I mean, how did you get these guys to buy into what you were trying to get them to do?
Well, a big thing with this school is the philosophy. We're the Volunteers. We kind of live by, just playing with honor, and it's going to 110% every day. And plus, I'm a player myself. I lace up the cleats and I go out there and I practice with them every single day. It just is like I'm another player. So,
is that something that your former coach did, or is that something that you kind of took on yourself to sort of not only coach the team, but also be directly on the field with them as well?
Right. Yeah. My coach did that from time to time, not every day, but he would lace up his boots and come out and play with us. So,
yeah. The Volunteers went 3-2-1 this season in the region play. Coach, your first year facing the region as a coach, how did you feel about the region as a whole in general? I mean, how have things changed since you started playing there?
Yeah, the region has changed quite a bit since I played. There's a lot of good teams. Mojave, they're a fantastic team, very physical team. They got a great coaching staff. Prescott, we played Prescott in a region game. They're sound. They're a good team.
Yeah.
And that shows.
Yeah, I mean, the region completely full of solid teams, like you said. Obviously Lee Williams, Prescott's playing well this year. You've got Coconino in the mix as well. A couple schools having a bit of a down year. I think Mojave's playing well as well. But it's been very fun for boys soccer in the region of 4A Grand Canyon. But Coach, I want to ask, obviously we're taking a look at the overall record, 8-4-1. That one tie coming against Flagstaff High School. We know playing Coach Jenkins is always tough. So I want to ask, what's your approach to a tie? I mean, is it kind of like, not necessarily, obviously not a loss, not a win. I mean, how do you sort of just transition from a tie into the next game?
Well, you go into the game, at the end of every game, it's whoever wants it more. So when it came down between us and Flagstaff, we went to double overtime. We couldn't get it decided, and that's just what it was. I don't really have any different feelings towards it. It just, that it happened and we got to move on to the next week.
So that's pretty much how it is, Coach. When you guys come into those situations, it's really just forgive and forget and move on to the next week.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I've never gotten a chance to talk to a coach about a tie yet. There aren't too many sports here that end in ties, and obviously soccer being one of them, football as well. So it's always fun to talk about sort of those weird anomalies in sports that happen, like ties and stuff like that. Again, we're speaking with Lee Williams High School boys soccer coach Trey Fitzsimmons. Coach Fitzsimmons finished up his first regular season with the Volunteers, finishing 8-4-1 overall. They've got their play-in game against Cholla High School coming up here very soon. They're out of the 4A Keno region. Coach, at this point in the season, where are some areas you'd like to see this team improve in?
I think overall our team needs to improve and be more vocal on the field as a whole team, because I have a few key players that will be vocal, but overall as a team, we think we need to be louder. Okay.
How do you get guys to sort of be a little bit more vocal? Do you give them just a little bit more of a leash during practice?
Yeah, definitely. And plus, especially with my captains, it's kind of their role as a captain, as a leader, to kind of instill that on them to get them to try to get there.
Were you a vocal player when you were out on the field, Coach?
Absolutely. I was screaming the whole game, and other team would kind of look at me funny, but that's just how it's got to be.
That's funny. Coach, I mean, as we're getting later into the season, obviously you guys got your playing round against Cholla. The regular season's pretty much done. So in terms of the scheme, in terms of substitutions, I mean, what adjustments are you making? Again, not specifically, we don't want to give anything away, but what adjustments are you making in those two areas? And are you making adjustments at this point in the season with your offensive scheme, your defensive scheme, and your substitution method?
I mean, as far as, substitutions, I just want to keep guys fresh. I want to keep guys out there if they need a substitution, if they're tired or if they get injured. That's not any good for the team or the game. So that's not going to win games, leaving guys out there fatigued. So, and as far as our scheme, I mean, we have a couple things we've had to tweak here and there. But we're not doing anything major.
Taking a look at just some of the guys on the rosters this season, senior Mark Zonka, Bo Brantley, they're at the top of the scoring list for you in terms of the seniors, along with Justin Wright. He's your third leading scorer as well. Coach, how have these guys impacted your first year, and how have they been instrumental in sort of welcoming you into the program?
Yeah, so Justin, he's a big football player. He's a very physical, athletic kid, and he's a great soccer player. He was one of the harder ones to sell at the beginning of the season because obviously he's with his other coach for the last 3 years. With Bowen, he came in pretty quiet kid, great athlete. His knowledge of the game is unmatched. He's a extremely smart player, vocal, physical. He's all around just an asset. And with Mark, we got him from Hungary. His English wasn't the greatest when we first got him. So, him working on that, but, he brings that different level of soccer you get from Europe. Right.
Yeah.
And just the different things he showed me, not only as a player, but as a coach with him coming into our program has been amazing. He's definitely changed everything for us.
Yeah. And what a significant transition, have a guy come, like you said, from a completely different country. Mark comes over from Hungary. Where are the different styles of play when it comes to European soccer compared to American?
He just has a different field of vision. He looks about 3 or 4 steps ahead. When he passes the ball, he's already got his next steps mapped out. He's used to playing with the same kind of guys over there. So coming over here was a little bit of an adjustment for him to like U.S. soccer. But Mark's just a smart guy, smart kid. The rule. I guess you could say, the way they play is a little bit different, the way they're physical. So
Okay.
coming over here was definitely a learning curve for him.
Yeah, I've gotten a chance to talk with basketball coaches, and they've discussed the differences. I think Prescott High School has a kid from Europe who came over as a transfer this season for the basketball team. And of course, the style of basketball in Europe is completely different than the style of the United States, even though a lot of it's crossing over. But that's interesting, Coach. I didn't even think about the physicality aspect of soccer. Soccer is an extremely physical sport. And so you would say it's a little more physical in Europe as opposed to here?
Yeah, definitely a little more physical over there. I'd definitely say that way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then with Mark specifically, how did you guys kind of ease that transition from his style of play to make it fit your style of play here in the States?
So like I said, Mark's English wasn't very great. So at first he wasn't very vocal. He would pass the ball and the kids weren't sure what he was going to do because, they don't really hear him talk too often. So it's a little bit of a learning curve to the kids to adjust to Mark because, we play him up top. He's just an all around great player. So being able to fit him into the scheme was definitely a little tough because, like I said, he's not very vocal.
Right. But obviously he brought still brings, I should say, a completely different style of play to the Lee Williams Volunteers. Again, we're speaking with their boys soccer coach, Trey Fitzsimmons. Coach, the rest of the senior class, there's about 8 of them, including the guys that I mentioned. Is there anything else you want to say about this talented group?
I got a couple other fantastic players. One of my captains, Michael Goodgian, he's an absolutely the greatest leader I could ask for as a senior captain. He can play anywhere on the field and excel. The kid is he's definitely a next level talent.
Yeah.
Hopefully he gets some looks at this from this season. Mm-hmm. But other than that, we got some solid kids.
Yeah, it seems like it, Coach. You got a junior goalie in Austin Gibson, excuse me. He's been playing well for you. Coach, how do you look to develop him next season? How did he grow throughout the season this year?
So when I first got Austin, his work ethic was not the greatest. He was a backup goalie last year to a senior goalie that is now a college athlete. And his work ethic was a little shoddy, but, Austin, just get him to work hard, doing different drills to kind of fit his style of play has definitely been a great thing because from my perspective, he's had a pretty good season. Yeah.
So, where do you think he could be next season if he continues to work the way he is?
I think I believe Austin could definitely be a college-bound goalkeeper if he works hard enough for it. I think we can get him there.
Yeah, I hope so, Coach. I'm a big fan, and I know a lot of people are a big fan of kids carrying on and playing sports at the collegiate level. What about next year's class, Coach? You're going to be welcoming back a few of these guys. How are you feeling about next year's group of guys going into next season?
Yeah, this season, after the end of this season, we're going to lose a couple good key players, but we have quite a few good young players that are going to step up either from the JV squad or some younger sophomores and then juniors going into seniors that can definitely fill the roles we need. I'm pretty confident with them.
How did you feel about the JV season in total?
Our JV season was a little rough. We only grabbed 1 win this year. A lot of the kids on the JV squad are their first couple years playing soccer and first year playing at a high school level is a little bit different than playing city or travel. So they had a little bit of adjustment. So I think next year they'll come back better.
Gotcha. Again, like I said, we're speaking with Lee Williams High School boys soccer coach Trey Fitzsimmons. The Volunteers finished the regular season 8-4-1. They earned the number 16 seed in the 4A, which gave them a play-in game against Chola High School out of the 4A Keno region. Coach, your first time in the playoffs here as a coach. First off, congratulations on that, because that is a feat in itself to make the playoffs in your first season. I just want to ask, how are you approaching this matchup against the Chargers?
Just like any other game. The kids are nervous. I'm a little nervous, like you said, first year going into something like this. A lot of people, wouldn't think that's going to happen, but we definitely prevailed, and we're going to do our best. So,
have you gotten a chance to look at Chola at all, or what are you expecting from them?
I mean, I expect them to come out fighting hard. They want to win. We want to win. They want to go on. We want to go on. Yeah. I definitely think it's be a fantastic game. I've kind of looked at the schedule and kind of looked at who they've played this year. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I haven't really seen any film on them.
Okay. One last question for you, Coach. Are there any teams that you're looking forward to potentially taking on in the next round of the playoffs? Anyone you're sort of looking at, or are you pretty focused on Chola right now?
So if we move past Chola, which I know I have full confidence in my team, I think we'll do a great job tonight. I'm definitely excited to look at playing Mojave in the first round. Okay.
Yeah, and that's going to be fun. That not necessarily crosstown rivalry, but of course that like I don't know what specifically you would call that rivalry between Mojave and Lee Williams, but for me, working within the 4A Grand Canyon region, you guys are kind of not necessarily out of the area, but on a little bit of an island there in the lake, in the Kingman area. But always fun watching Lee Williams and Mojave play each other in any sport. But Coach Fitzsimmons, first off, congratulations on making the playoffs. Best of luck against Chola. Again, that game is taking place here February 9th. And I want to say one last thing, Coach, for you before we let you go. Go Bengals, because I'm a 49ers fan. You're a Bengals fan. We're rooting for the same team this Sunday. So I appreciate you, Coach, for coming on the program.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Bradshaw Mountain High School basketball coach Blair Hillig right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by a familiar face of the program. He is Bradshaw Mountain boys basketball coach Blair Hillig. Coach Hillig, welcome back onto the program.
Thanks for having me, Philip. It's always a pleasure.
Well, we're always happy to have you, Coach. The last time we spoke, you guys were getting ready to start the winter break, going into the start of your just your fall break in general. We are now completely out of that. The season is actually over. The regular season for the Bears is wrapped up. They are currently 13-5 overall, earning the number 17 spot in the state. Coach, how do you feel the season went just in general?
Overall, I think it went well. There's always ups and downs in the course of the season. I think that's sometimes unavoidable. So I'm pretty pleased with what we did. We didn't have any terrible losses. We some games that obviously any loss is never fun, but there was, sometimes you have those losses. You go, what in the world, how'd that happen? But we didn't have any of those. There's a couple that we would like to have back that maybe we could have played better in. But I thought the kids worked hard all season. I thought we got better as a team. I thought they got better as individuals. And we had a lot of fun. So overall, I'm pretty pleased.
Yeah, that's good to hear, Coach. Like I mentioned, you guys are going to be entering the postseason here very soon. Where's the focus in practice been this week?
It's interesting because we've been talking a lot about, we're happy to be there. There's a lot of teams that are turned in their gear, already.
Yeah.
And I really think sometimes teams, it's hard to maintain that focus because you got kids that are ready for baseball and you got kids that are ready for track, or, their minds start to drift elsewhere sometimes because it's been a little bit of a grind. So we've been talking about, trying to stay where our feet are and staying focused and finishing things up and trying to make sure that we're being really sharp on what we're doing. Our practices haven't been going as long because I know that mental fatigue and physical fatigue are there. And just trying to keep them sharp on the things that that we do.
Coach, you talk about, obviously, the spring season is coming up real soon, and I know that Bradshaw Mountain's going to be looking forward to getting a few of your guys out on the baseball diamond. So I want to ask, when you get to this point in the season where your season is not done yet, but another season is starting to continue, I mean, how do you kind of balance, guys who are really sharing time between two programs when, you guys aren't necessarily done yet?
Yeah, it's a challenge because, you want those kids to be successful in everything they do. Like baseball, they go out there and they haven't been throwing or something, that can be dangerous to their arms. So we try to get them out there and throw and do those things at least, when they can. And JV and freshmen, it's easier to do at that level because, it's not so important that they win their games. The ones that we're playing now at the varsity level are all so important. So gets a little trickier there, but we just got to encourage them to try to divide their time a little bit, for now anyway.
Coach, you have a solid senior class. Before we let you go for the final bit of the season, is there anything else that you want to say about this group of guys that you had this year?
Yeah, I'm just super pleased with them. They were freshmen when I took over as my first year as head coach, so got to know these guys really, really well. Super kids, this super kids, they're pretty good basketball players too, but they're just better kids and they're fun to be with. Every group that leaves, you're going to miss them, but this group is going to be special. I'm pretty tight with them. I'm just good guys.
How do you kind of build that rapport with your players, Coach?
A lot of us is, we just spend so much dang time together, and I know that I get on their nerves sometimes and it's hard because I can be a little abrasive at times at practice and in games, but the summertime is important because, those bonds are just formed with each other, those guys with each other and then with the coaching staff. And, those are memories that I know that they get a kick out of. We just had senior night and they talk about, the memories they had that was kind of stuck out with them. But, those are memories that the coaches have too. It's just fun for us as well.
What did you tell your senior class, Coach, on that senior night? Did you give them any kind of words of advice or any kind of encouragement?
I think sometimes when you have that, maybe that you can add a little bit of pressure to yourselves. I think sometimes maybe you try to do too much. I told them to have fun and make sure you're still playing for each other because, that's why we had success. And I think they took that to heart and they really had a good time out there.
Coach, we talked about junior Ben Wilder. He's absolutely been solid so far this season. He's currently averaging about 12 points per game so far. I keep saying so far, even though we're pretty much done with the regular season. But, Coach, how has he embraced his role this season? And, I mean, you're going to get him back next season. You're going to get another player that we're going to talk about in just a second back next season. I mean, where do you think he can go from here as a junior going into his final year?
Yeah, he's continuing to improve. I know that he's going to continue to improve as we move forward also. His scoring has increased. He can be a really good scorer, 12 points a game. He's going to top that for sure next year when the focus becomes more of, getting him the basketball. The one thing he's still going to improve on is he's got to score in a variety of ways, gets more rebounds and putbacks and things like that, which he's starting to do. You're starting to see a little bit of that. Defensively, he can get after and get some steals and get some stuff in transition. So, I'm excited at the progress he's made and probably even more excited about where he's going to go next year.
Like I mentioned, the last time that we talked about sophomore Mason Hunt. You talked about how he's really been improving throughout the season. You mentioned that you wanted to sort of, work on his defensive intensity a little bit and see him pick that up. I'm just curious, Coach, where's the update with the development of sophomore Mason Hunt?
He continues to get better. The nice thing about where we're at now is we've had a lot of time to have some games, and with games we have some game film. I think sometimes the guys think I'm making stuff up when I'm yelling at practice, but then we sit down and we watch some things on game film and we say, Mason, how come you didn't get through this screen? Or Mason, how come this guy got the rebound? And he's like, sorry, coach. So when you're able to see that, and the other kids see it, they go, all right, I can do this. I can do better. So sometimes I think it's just a matter of reminding yourself that, hey, I have another notch, and I got to take it there and play it at that level all the time. But he's doing it. He's getting better and better. He's been a little bit under the weather right now. He missed the last 2 days of practice, so hopefully we'll have him tomorrow for at least some of it. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but he's really helped us this year.
Again, we were speaking with Bradshaw Mountain boys basketball coach Blair Hillig. The Bears finished their regular season 13-5, currently sitting at number 17 in the state, looking at a play-in round game coming up here real soon. Coach, we talked about Ben Wilder. We talked about Mason Hunt, two guys who came into this program with a lot of potential. I want to ask, when you've got players like that, guys who show those glimpses, those flashes of how good they can be when they're young, specifically Mason Hunt, you've talked about how even as a sophomore, he's been playing great. Ben Wilder, same thing. He's been developing pretty well into his junior year, now going into his senior year next season. So is there anything that you kind of see in some of these kids when they come through your program where it's like, this kid has got some flashes of some really, really good talent. We just need to focus on some other areas. So my question, I guess, is how do you sort of decipher where you've got how do you sort of figure out when a kid's going to really make that turn and really start to become a solid player for you? Is there anything like as a freshman you're seeing with them, as a sophomore, anything early on that gives you an indication as to where they could be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
It was tough asking it, Coach.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's one exact answer. The first thing that always catches my eye, to be honest, is guys that you just keep on seeing in the gym. We have open gyms and whatever, and those freshmen especially are always there, because that's tough. Freshmen, it's like, do I want to be in the gym with these older guys? And those guys that keep showing up, you go, all right, and then the thing I like is when they compete. There's certain guys that they just compete no matter who they're going against, no matter what age they're going against. They just have it. They just have that competitive edge. And when they have that, you got to feel like, hey, by the time this is all said and done, they're going to be good high school players or possibly college players. So, just that willingness to be there and that willingness to compete, I think, are the things that probably catch my eye the most.
Coach, I want to backtrack just a second. Like I mentioned, you had said that Mason Hunt, you wanted to see him pick up his defensive intensity. What do you do in practice and in general with somebody that you want to see their defensive intensity pick up? Is there anything specific you do?
We try to do a lot of competitive stuff, and I kind of make the matches, so that they're going to be hopefully at times overmatched, or maybe not overmatched, but at least it's going to be somebody that I know is going to push them. Because sometimes if you just say, hey, go partner up, you go find the guy that's going to give you the least resistance. So, Josue did that with Josue Leonard, our point guard. Him and Carter John last year were always locked up with each other. And I thought Carter brought Josue to another level last year. And so we try to do that, competitive rebounding, competitive one-on-one stuff, anything that will get their juices flowing. And I think it's always good sometimes that a sophomore gets humbled a little bit.
Yeah, isn't it, huh? Coach, at this point in the season, I'm sure your offensive and defensive scheme are pretty much locked in. Your substitution method is pretty much locked in. But I'm curious, when you're at this point in the year where you go, obviously you guys will have the play-in round. Hopefully you make it past the play-in round and go into the second round of the playoffs, or technically the first round. But, at this point in the season, Coach, how do you approach adjustments? Because while you want to make sure you have the best product on the floor, at the same time, you don't necessarily want to throw a huge wrench into what you guys have been doing all season long.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a new season, and I try to stress to those guys that, just because your last outing might not have been a good one, that doesn't necessarily mean the next one's not going to be the great one. And now that, that the pressure goes up and you lose, you're done. So we do have to kind of play with the hot hand at this point. Sometimes, and I just had this conversation with them today, if you go out there and you struggle tomorrow, and you get pulled, and normally, I just let you get back in the game or whatever, but it might be a little bit different if someone steps in there and they have the hot hand. They might stay on the floor a little bit longer just because we got to ride it. It's kind of, I don't want it to be unfair to kids, but just so they know that, that's kind of the expectation, and it doesn't mean if we make it, to the next round that they won't have their number called again, because they will. But right now we got some guys that are playing well. They're playing with a lot of confidence, so they'll get those opportunities. But we got, we have a nice bench. It's probably the best bench I've had since I've been there at the head coach. So if someone's struggling, we got somebody hopefully that'll come in and do the job for us.
Coach, you got an opportunity, obviously, again, to see the region. Prescott playing very well this season. Coco's playing well as they usually are. Flagstaff Coach Walton's got his guys playing well. What was your interpretation of the region play you saw this season, Coach?
Really good. Really good. Those teams you mentioned, fantastic. We split with Coco, we split with Prescott, and we didn't get any off of Flagstaff this year. They played really, really well both games. I was kind of hoping we would have played them early. It seemed like they were struggling early in the season, but right now they're playing really, really well. I'm impressed. They've all those coaches have done a great job, and there's good personnel there. I think all of them will win their playing game and have a chance to even knock somebody off in the next round. They're just really well coached, and kids play hard for each other and for their coaches, and that's a winning combination.
Again, we are speaking with Bradshaw Mountain High School boys basketball coach Blair Hillig. Again, the Bears finished their regular season with a 13-5 record, sitting at number 17 in the state right now, getting ready for their first play-in round matchup coming up here very soon. Coach, going into the playoffs here, I know, anybody is fun to play, but I'm just curious, is there anyone, whether it be in region or out of region? I talked with Lee Williams boys soccer coach Trey Fitzsimmons just a few moments ago and asked him the same question as, is there anybody that you're kind of like, excited to potentially face in the playoffs, or any region opponents you're potentially excited about seeing? He mentioned Lee Williams. He'd love to see Mojave in the playoffs. Are you feeling the same way about Prescott potentially?
Yeah, that's a tough one for us because, with Prescott, it's such an emotional game for our kids. And then you add that fact that it's playoffs, that makes it a little spicier. But it's always fun. It's a great atmosphere. So would I like it? Sure. That means we both advanced. That would be the cool thing. Anybody in our region, it'd be cool. At the same time, it'd be kind of nice not to face any region opponents because it gives all of us a chance to move on too. I'm excited about our first matchup, and that's the one we're going to focus on, and we'll see what happens from there.
How did the JV season go this year, Coach? What was your kind of summary on that?
Yeah, they did really well. We got a nice JV group coming up. I think they're 15-3. Our freshmen are 14-4. So lower levels really did an outstanding job. They've got some nice players there.
What a solid seasons from your lower levels. Kind of, did they give you any indication as to like who might be coming up next season, or who you might be seeing up on your program at some point? Yeah, it does. Again, I talked about a little bit just with the competitiveness. You really get to see that, and there's some kids that man, they just compete, and that's something that translates pretty quickly to the varsity level. Sometimes there's a big step between JV and varsity, and there's a pretty big step between freshman and JV. But if they are willing to compete, that gap gets closed pretty quickly. Coach, is there anybody specifically that you're looking forward to seeing up on the roster next season? I know the season isn't done yet, but I'm just curious, is there anyone that you're excited to get back alongside? Is there anybody that you're excited to add alongside Ben Wilder and Mason Hunt and a few of the other returners you're expecting? Yeah, we're going to have 9 guys that are on the varsity team that return. One guy, Dante Landis, he broke his leg before we ever played a game. Last year, he broke his collarbone snowboarding after one game. But he's going to be a senior next year. But he's our tallest kid in the program, and he might be our best shooter. I would love to see him actually play a basketball game for us. He's been a gym rat. He works really hard. He's just getting off that injury, and he's already in the gym. Coach, can I practice? No, Dante, you can't practice. Can I go through warm-ups with you? Can I shoot free throws? You love that spirit in him. So I hope he stays healthy. I'd like to see him next year, wear a Bradshaw uniform. All the guys that are coming back on varsity, they were there for a reason this year, and I'm looking forward to see what they do. Michael Polito was on the JV team. We brought him up right now to practice with us. He's a point guard, and I think he's going to be a solid varsity player. And then there's, obviously the other JV kids, and there's a few freshmen that are going to be fighting for varsity spots next year as well. Wow, that's very exciting, Coach. Like I mentioned, The Bears getting ready for their play-in round game coming up here real soon. They finished the regular season 13-5, currently sitting at number 17 in the state. And they are led by this man right here, Bradshaw Mountain boys basketball coach Blair Hillig. Coach Hillig, thank you very much for coming on the program. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. I also agree. I'd love to see you guys face Prescott. I'd love to see you face Flagstaff and every other 4A Grand Canyon region opponent that made it into the tournament. But, Coach, best of luck, and thank you again for coming on.
Thanks so much, Phil. Appreciate it.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will speak with Mingus Union girls basketball coach Paul Ventura. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt tax office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Mingus Union High School girls basketball coach Paul Ventura. Coach Ventura, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Well, Coach, we're always happy to have you back on the program. The Marauders have wrapped up their season, their regular season, finishing 7-10 on the year. They took a trip up to Lee Williams earlier this week to finish out the season. So, Coach, I just want to ask, how did that final game of the season go?
Yeah, it was last night actually. We ended up losing by 6. We played really hard. The first half, we just had probably too many mistakes, and in the second half, as much as we did, it was pretty much tied the entire second half of the game. It was back and forth. We'd go up by 2, they would go up by 2, or we'd be tied. And then at the end of the game, it was time to put them at the foul line to stop the clock, and they hit a few foul shots, and we missed a few, and that ended up being the game. But they're a really good team. I think they're 12th or 15th right now. In the state, and they're a really well coached team. They work really hard, and we played them on our senior night, and they ended up beating us by double digits. So it was an improvement from the first time, which is what we want to see. Yeah. We just didn't come out with the win, unfortunately.
Well, on the positive, Coach, last season the Marauders only managed 4 wins in 2020, in 2020, a very annoying year. But Coach, in 2020, let me reset here. The Marauders had 4 wins in 2020 to 2021. So last season, I'm just going to say last season. I'm done with years. So last season, you guys had 4 wins. This year, Coach, though, you guys almost double that with 7 wins. How did you feel the season went? That's quite an achievement in itself.
Yeah, we have dedicated kids. The seniors are the first group that's been with me for 4 years. So, they understood, and I think they started to execute really well. The juniors, I've coached 2 of the juniors when they were middle school too. So I've coached them for 6 years, and then Taylor for the last 3 years. So they also understood too. And then the 7th kid that played a lot of minutes was Michaela Martinez, who's a sophomore. And she just has a really good basketball IQ, and she has some skill. So, and she's easily coachable. She's someone who as a coach, you like it. Her mom's a coach, and I think that helps quite a bit too. They executed better than any of the other teams up until now. Skill-wise, they're probably overall the best. The first year that I was there at Mingus, that team was pretty skilled, but I was a new coach, and I was also the 3rd coach that they had in 4 years. So they were unfortunately behind the 8 ball. And I actually met with several of them this year and told them, that's on me, that we should have been more successful that year. And I didn't do as well as I should have done for them. But I thought we were good. We probably should have won more. We should have been a double-digit win team this year. And like you were talking about with last year, we had ups and downs again this year. We only had our full varsity team for half the games.
Yeah.
Between COVID and then a couple eligibility issues. And so it's tough to be highly successful when that happens. But even with it, our kids battled, and they even when they were undermanned, they said, okay, we're going out, we're going to play, and we have a job to do, and let's go do it.
Yeah. And I mean, you've always been able to get players to buy in. I mean, we've talked about your past as a coach and also your past as a correctional officer. And you've worked alongside kids before, and I know you've coached before, so it's never an issue of buying in, but it's definitely tough, Coach, when you're not having your full roster, like you said, throughout the season, where it's just like we try to get some momentum going and someone's got to go out or somebody can't play, and it definitely kind of slows down the momentum of the season.
Yeah, there's no doubt. When we thought we started off the season too, where we played a game where the first game where we thought, okay, we should win this game, and we did, and it was pretty handedly, but we made some mistakes that I wanted to fix. And then the very next game was against Flagstaff, who is always a top 5 team in the state. And so it was like, hey, the things we didn't do on Tuesday, we need to do on Friday. So that's a tough way to start a season, but then after that first week, we didn't have our full roster for the next 2 weeks. Then we went into the Christmas break and we played in a tournament, and we did have our full roster. And tournaments are always weird with the kids. You never know if they're going to, jump into it with both feet and do great, or if they're going to struggle with staying in a hotel and playing at different times. And then when we came back after the break, we again had, a couple kids out, and then we had sick issues, and McKella got hurt for like the first time in her athletic career. And so she had to miss a game for the first time, and she was helpful for us. She's a patient player. And so she's the kind of kid you want the ball in her hands so that she can be patient and have everybody else be calm. So when she was out, that threw a little bit of a wrench into it too. But yeah, I'm sure other teams have had their share of issues too. It just seemed like it was consistently happening to us.
Well, it's definitely kind of hard to not think that when you guys, like you said, you have one player and then they go and they come back, and it's just tough to get things going. But it's nice to see that Michaela Martinez, sophomore, she'll be back with the program next season. You talked about her significance with the team, how she's a very coachable player. She saw a significant minute increase this season. Obviously, Michaela will be one you're getting back next season. But Coach, I wanted to talk about your senior class. Jade Bach, Mariana Lopez, and Rachel Odell. We talked during the offseason how these 3 players impacted the program. You specifically talked about how Rachel had improved offensively and defensively as a player over the summer. Mariana Lopez really stepped up as a leader and probably the captain of the program. And Jade Bach also improved her game and contributed as a leader on the team as well. So, Coach, you've gotten to see these girls for all 4 years so far. I mean, what can you say about this senior class? It's a little smaller than the already small class you had last year.
I know. I'm really proud of them. They really worked hard. The 3 of them put in all the work that they needed to put in, and things didn't always go their way, but they showed up to practice and they worked hard. And then in every game, they put in 100% effort. Jade and Mariana especially are like catalysts for the team. They have a ton of speed and a ton of energy, and they play really aggressive defense. And so, probably statistically, Jade ends up being the best defensive player on the team between defensive rebounds, steals, and deflections. And truthfully, most of the time when we played a team, I would put Jade on the best player. And even if she was outsized, we would say, hey, this is your job for tonight. And so there's sometimes maybe her offense suffered a little bit because of it, because she was working extremely hard. Yeah. Mariana, Jade, Michaela probably played the most minutes throughout the season too. Like they're averaging around 28 minutes a game out of 32 minutes. and that puts a lot of stress on your body. Mariana, I think, improved quite a bit, and I think the way you're talking about too, where her leadership. She's a passionate player, so some younger kids can kind of be, intimidated by that type of a personality. But I think it's great for sports, and I think she showed all year that she was a leader. And really, with Rachel, like we had talked about over the summer, her skill sets continued to improve. It's always been confidence for her. If she's going to be confident in the game, she'll do okay, especially offensively. If she makes a first shot, she's going to do great. And if she doesn't, then it's one of those things of, is she going to take the next open shot or is she going to pass it up? So that was probably the thing that we hammered home with her all year was, be confident. You're a good shooter. Put the ball up. So I was happy with them. I thought they did a good job. I'm sure they wish they had more success, just like I do. And we had goals for the season, and we didn't quite meet them. But overall, they had some success, and they're the most successful team we've had in a long time. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, an improvement from 4 wins in last season to almost 8, and almost a complete double of win total. And like you said, if you guys remove, I hate that there's a what if attached to this season, but very much so. I mean, if you guys hadn't struggled with a lot of those issues with injuries and everything that's been going on this year, I think we'd all love to know how, what the total wins would have been and how this team would have been at the end of the year. Because, I mean, Coach, even going down to the stretch of the season, you guys were kind of in the mix for a play-in bid as we headed into the final stretch of the year.
Yeah. So the last 3 games were Lee Williams, then Coconino at Coconino, and then Lee Williams at Lee Williams. Unfortunately, that was a rescheduling thing, so we had to play them twice in 7 days. But if we won 2 out of those 3 games, we'd be in the playoffs right now. There's no doubt. And truthfully, I think if we won one of them, we might still be at that 24th spot and be able to play and get into it. And we were competitive. We went to Coconino, and it was a really close game the entire time. Shouldn't say that. We went down 19-5, really 20-5, really early. And then we battled back, and it was a close game the entire second half where we had it tied for a long time. We took the lead for a while. And then they ended up, same thing, we put them on the foul line. Unfortunately, the wrong kid, Husky, she's about as good a foul shooter as you can get, and she ended up with the ball all the time. So I think they ended up winning by 9, but it was one of those things, like, it wasn't a 9-point game. It was a 2-point game. And Coach Schrader would tell you the same thing. Like, it was close. So we're competitive with the number 16 team in the state. And yesterday with Lee Williams, really competitive with the number 15 team in the state. I think, and we played Deer Valley, who's number 1 in the state, and who, they absolutely took us to the woodshed. But, they're great. They're a great basketball team. Flagstaff, very, very good basketball team, top 5 basketball team. So we have a difficult schedule. Saguaro is number 8 or 10 in the state, really good team. So we have a difficult schedule. We're not playing any cupcake type teams. Right. And, when we're competitive against those top 15 teams, it makes me happy. We should probably pull out some of those wins. Yesterday, we should have won. We should have beat Coconino on Friday, and stuff that we didn't do as good as we should have done. But that's where I think the success comes in, and we start to talk about the woulda, shoulda, couldas. And, we can't go – and what I tell the kids all the time, we can't go back and replay the game. Now we got to move on to the next step.
Yeah. Again, we're speaking with Mingus Union High School girls basketball coach Paul Ventura. The Marauders wrapped up their season this week. Coach, you also had 5 freshmen find their way onto the roster this season. Just to name a couple of those names, Cambry Goff, Maya Bear, and Marie Thompson, excuse me, were just a few of those names of those freshmen that made their way onto the roster. Coach, how did they kind of help the program down the stretch? We talked about some players, maybe not necessarily seeing a lot of playing time due to injuries and whatnot, but, it's good that you can pull up the freshmen and they compete well.
Yeah, we I think overall for the entire program, we had 18 freshmen, which is a lot. They're a great group of kids. They're absolutely phenomenal, not just skill-wise, like their attitude, their personalities. They're a super quirky group of kids, and they like to have a good time, but they're competitive when it's time to be competitive. We ended up pulling up, like you said, about 5 freshmen at one point, or 4 freshmen, and Kaya Pinion Thompson ended up playing quite a few positive minutes for us, and she's a 6-foot freshman with some skill. Alice Kinsey also is a 6-foot freshman. Different types of players. Kaya can play on the perimeter, and Alice is much more of a post player, but they both played some significant minutes for us in some games. They might not hit the floor in a couple of games, and then there was other games where they played 8-10 minutes. That's a lot in my mind for freshmen, especially with that speed difference. And really, it took them about half the season to feel confident on the varsity floor. Those first handful of games, 6-7 games, they were a little nervous that they were going to make mistakes. And I told them, everybody makes mistakes. It's not a problem with mistakes. But if they hold themselves back without being confident, then we never truly get to see what they can do skill-wise. I think they started to get much more confident. And Marie's going to be a talented kid. Yeah, as the program goes forward, I think everybody's going to see Marie is a kid that can play some basketball.
Well, Coach, I want to talk about the forwardness of the program because I don't really know how to bring it up, so I'll kind of just let you go ahead with it. So I just want to ask, what's the state of the program right now, Coach?
Yeah, that this is my last season with the program, and so I think, and there's a lot of reasons behind it, but the main reason is my family. I have 2 little kids, and they want me around, and they want me to coach them, and I want to coach them too, and be around them as much as possible. And it's tough to do with when you're running the program. It's legitimately 11 months a year, and even in that 12th month, I end up doing something for the program in some way. So it takes a ton of time, and so I want to be around my kids more. So I decided in early December that I was going to step away, and I didn't, I told the coaches, but I didn't really talk to the kids about it because I didn't want it to be a thing for them. I wanted them to play for themselves. But I think in the last 4 years, my coaching staff is excellent. And I think in the last 4 years, we've made some significant changes, culture changes where, we consistently talk about being good citizens, being good kids, being good students, teammates, and skill-wise. We're improving every single year, which is what the program's supposed to do. And originally I told the athletic director, Yancy DeVore, I said, it's going to take 5 to 7 years for it to really fully change. So it's only been 4 years, but we've seen significant change in the 4 years. And Coach Troy Hoke, who's the JV coach, my assistant coach, and Joe Odell, who's the freshman coach and an assistant, and Sarah Williams, who's an assistant coach now, and she played for me my first year at Mingus, and she's like the epitome of what you want for a player. And then she's taking that into learning how to be a coach, and she's like a sponge. She's going to be a great coach. And then this year, Dave Beery, who's the boys coach, was really active with our program. He went to a ton of the off-season stuff with us and pretty much every practice throughout the season. He must be exhausted because he was going to 2 hours of his own practice and then 2 hours of my practice afterwards on most days. And he was a really helpful voice to have around. So you basically have 2 head coaches, and really with the experience that Joe and Troy have, it's like 4 head coaches out there. And we all fit together really well, and our philosophies are all the same. So I feel like the program's going in a really good direction. I'm not sure what all the coaches are planning to do, but I actually think most of them are planning to come back. Okay. And now it's going to be finding the right person to take over the reins, which I offered to be a part of the process. I'd like to be a part of a transition that's smooth so that the players are, they feel good, they feel comfortable, and the program continues in a positive way.
Well, Coach Ventura, as much as I do want to wish you the best of luck, and in a similar way, Coach Beery was in a similar situation as you were as well, wanted to take some time to spend with his family, and he was able to come back to the program as you talked about. Of course, your plans are your plans, Coach, and I'm very supportive of them. But I will say it's not gonna be the same doing off the bench without checking in with Coach Paul Ventura and talking about those Mingus Marauders. But Coach, I want to thank you very much for always being so helpful and always so kind when we were covering games, coming on the show. always being responsive, coming on to our other programs here. But I really am going to miss you, Coach. And I want to have one last question for you before we let you go. Through all the players who have came through your program, all the ones who are currently going through the program, do you want to say one last thing to those players who had the opportunity to play under you? And do you have anything to say to the ones who are going to get ready for that transition year next year?
Yeah, I appreciate everything they've done. I'm not an easy coach to play for. And I know that, and they know it, and we talk about it frequently. But I require a lot of hard work, and it's 6 days a week, pretty much the entire season, and then the off season is very demanding as well. I put a lot of pressure on them to be not only good in school, but put that work in on the basketball floor, and that's not easy. We have a lot of rules, and that's also not easy. And so I just appreciate their hard work and their dedication. The ones that stick around, it shows who they are. And I think going on in life, it's going to help them to say, I've gone through some things that have not been easy. Adversity helps to really forge someone's toughness, strength, ability to work through things that don't come easy. And so we talk about life skills all the time with our program, and that hopefully they're learning some of those when they get done. Basketball is great, but I want them to also be able to learn some life skills. So dribbling a basketball, they know that, but they also know how to handle some things. So I love them all. They've all been great. I have different relationships with all of them. And, it's one of those things where I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss them, especially. That's the part I'm going to miss. Everything else is secondary and ancillary, but I'm going to miss being around the kids and joking around. A couple of the freshmen asked me at the beginning of the year if I ever smile. And I immediately started laughing. And they were like, "Oh, you do."
You're so intimidated. It's the beard. I think it's the beard.
I think so. And I'm constantly, if I'm concentrating, my face is not smiling. And so I told them, I said, of course I smile. But that's the kind of kids they are, where they were a little nervous at first, but then they realized like, oh, okay, that's not who this is. So I was able to develop really good relationships with a bunch of those kids this year too. So I wish I was there for the next 3 years for them, but I think that the program's going to go in the right way. And I just hope, I wish them the best of luck. I want them to all be successful, and the program to be successful too.
Well, Coach, I know that the program is in great hands. Like you talked about, Coach Troy Hoke and Coach Odell are both potentially going to be back next season. You mentioned Sarah Williams could be another piece to the coaching puzzle. But I do want to thank you for your time with Mingus Union High School. And again, always just being so kind and courteous to us and myself. And that's all I can ask for, Coach. And I look forward to potentially the return of Paul Ventura to whatever program may need his services next. But for right now, Coach, I respect and very much encourage your decision to focus on your family. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck. And for the final time, this is Mingus Union High School girls basketball coach Paul Ventura. Sir, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
That's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'm your host, Philip Katafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you again next time.